All right, guys, welcome back to the Align Podcast. Today we got episode 13, the one and only Schiff up from Baltimore. And what's fun about today's episode is I want to talk about why teams fail, like the problems that teams have, that team leaders, that the agents on the team. So you having coached so many super high level team leaders, I'm just curious, like what is like a reoccurring theme that you keep seeing as it comes through?
I didn't know people fail in real estate,
No,
Brett.
never.
I didn't know that happened. I thought
Never.
everything's perfect.
Well, that's what social media says, but
That's
you
very
see the
true.
behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question, right? There are so many different mechanisms, and every single real estate business, I think, is unique. If we started talking about some of the overarching things that I think affect everyone, a lot of the challenges that come in team scale is really the position of the team leader and how they start to grow the business. When there's not a lot of support behind the actual leader of the business, and then they start growing and putting all these people underneath them, the majority of people who are joining real estate teams, you're either getting somebody who has not yet become a star, and you're going to scale them to be a star, and then they're going to leave you, or you're going to get a whole lot of people who are just very humbly happy in a regular real estate career selling 12, 24, 36, 48 houses, and that's enough for them. So those people take resources, and humans, you're only one person with 24 hours. So when you have a team leader who a lot of them are still having to produce because they haven't brought enough revenue in to get out of production, then they're attempting to get other people to produce, then they're attempting to now provide value to other people besides themselves. Value just doesn't get created because you say, I got a CRM or I have leads or I have a marketing system. You actually have to build structures, and you have to have the people that you're then leading to execute the structures. And that is very challenging from the standpoint of just how you have to show up and organize your priorities with others, to having the right people in the seat of the bus and making sure that they're living in high energy, because the worst thing you can have is a toxicity or a cancer in a team. And that's what tends to happen a lot. You have one unhappy person who's not getting paid attention to, and they're just quiet enough that you're not hearing them scream because there's louder screaming babies around, but they also have enough of a voice that they start to create a lot of challenges in mindset, because keeping everyone rowing the boat in the same direction and the oars moving at that same rhythm is really the goal. Yet often we have a few people in the back not even rowing, or if they're throwing it in every now and then, it's sending people in the opposite direction. So I think a lot of it really comes in that people don't realize what it takes to actually build a business structure. Yet as soon as you're a really awesome real estate agent, the next thing to obviously do is like, now I'm going to grow a team, because whether it's ego or whether it's a desire for big business, or whether you think your $500,000 is going to come and be $1 million just because you grow a team, for most people starting at that point, it goes from 500 to 350 before they see it ever go up,
Right.
because you just get so distracted. So I think that is one of the first things that I would say gets lost in just the structure of team building.
Yep.
Or the myth of seventh level. So we come from the world where we were taught the real estate structure is like get out. So build up to get out. Well, I don't know anyone who has gotten out and is in either done or is back in, right? And I think that's a big part of where, as business owners, we're like, well, our success is built on the less we do and the more others do. And that also breaks, because then you're not giving the thought leadership, and you're not providing the structure or the vision or the core values that are necessary for you to really run, again, the ship the way you want to run it. So I think a big part of it is starting to just understand even what has to happen before you go into that building structure. And that can really help.
Did you see Dan Beer's post?
Yes, I actually
thought
did.
That was so spot on.
I thought it was very
Because I've never
spot on.
really thought, basically he was saying exactly what you're talking about, where that the seventh level organization is really a myth. And it's almost like religion. It's almost like we were chasing something to become that. And expansion was another version of that as well, where it's like, how do we build these gigantic ecosystems to do this glamorous thing? And at the end of the day, I don't think that was his intention behind it. I think it was actually to have those things get created. But it really, what it did is it drove revenue to the parent company and whatnot. But it really killed profitability for a lot of these organizations. And I had a good friend of mine went expansion all the way and then had that completely implode on him because it was so difficult to manage those market centers. And you and I work with Captivate, which we have strong leadership there, which really is the only way that that can work. But it would have been easier had we just stayed within a 30-minute drive and opened a different market center in our own backyard. So that seventh level, like myth of that building that really big business is, I don't know, it's just crazy to me. I mean, we're playing around with AI right now, and I'm telling the bots, I want to catch the leads and I want to focus on luxury with it. And I want to experience how this comes through and what is it going to look like for the agent. So if I can go knock down 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 listings based on receiving that, then we can really package it and show them a value how this works. Versus, I feel like a lot of leaders will be like, oh, here's a realtor.com lead. You go in and do this because somebody told me that you need to follow up with it 3 times per day and do this, 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 and this, when it's something that they've never really, geeked out on.
Yeah, there's so many things like spinning in my head as you talk
Yeah.
about that. You
I
know,
knew I had to let you go.
yeah, I was like, oh my gosh. Well, one of the things that the conversation reminds me of is that as we are leading and growing teams, our delusion is that we are going to find this talented individual who, whatever department, the marketing department, this TC department, they're going to start running agent productivity, like you name it. You're going to put this person in the seat and you can be hands off.
Right.
And we go hands off, and whether it's going to play golf or whether it's going to build another business or going and focusing on our investment properties or whatever the heck it is, when this person comes into the seat, we very rarely, especially when we think we won with talent, are going and really leading them at the degree that people need to be led.
Right.
And the more talented you are, the more desire you have for expectation, the more desire you have to know whether you're winning or losing and where the mark is. And the mark is often lost in these realtors building these businesses thinking that their goal is to be able to hire and ignore and give somebody else the problems. Yet it is really about like inspecting what we expect. And, a great example is you and just the lineage of how we grow out of real estate team and team ownership. We start and we work and we do all the deals. Like we're working with the buyers, we're working with the sellers. And then most of us, the first lineage is we're going to drop buyers off. And then the next lineage is we're going to drop listings off. And then you get to this idea of seventh level, but you don't really, because for most of us, when we're no longer working with buyers and sellers, now what are we doing? We're going and growing. And now we're in the agent business, and we're in the agent attraction business and the agent growth business. And then what happens when you get the opportunity to actually have leverage in the agent growth side of business, which is where we've just reached a line. And it's very exciting. Yet for you, as a perfect example of it, each time we leverage you out of one of these areas, you're not going and ignoring what's happening. You're now able to just function, and we're able to function as leaders to these people to make sure they have what they need to succeed.
Right.
So it's like we're more in the business than we've ever been. We just have the freedom to have really great people actually being willing to work with us and do the things. But again, even the most talented people we want, if we look at the organization, they're the ones who are screaming the loudest for us the most, because they're the ones who actually have the need to achieve and the desire for the result. So again, a big part of it is just thinking that you can hand things off to someone, or you can hire somebody that's equal or greater than you in anything, and that it's all good. And it's not. You really do have to hold that line and be able to be in the work with them.
Right.
And the more you do that, the more you can actually drive what you desire versus leaving it up to somebody else. Because when the thought leadership is missing and there's not alignment in everybody doing the same thing, one of the other big failures I would say is the siloing of these businesses. So the bigger the business gets, the more siloed these teams become. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, but all the problems then come up to the team leader. And here you are as the rainmaker, you just don't want to deal with it. So you're like, oh, this is your solution. Great, go do that. Oh, this sounds good to you. Go do that. And meanwhile, this person was supposed to be doing that thing. And it just creates a lot of issues. And I think that that's where like misalignment tends to happen against core values in organizations. And when those things are missing, it's really hard. Like we like to talk about humming. It's challenging to hum if we don't know the tune.
Right.
And most people aren't slowing down to figure out the tune to their song.
No, not at all. And I feel like that's some of the things that like we really spent probably a good 2.5 years. I don't want to say we slowed down per se, but we really did. Like we this past week when you and I were talking about the recruiting aspect of things, and like we actually have the best recruiters out there. I truly believe that with all my heart. And it allows me to go speed up and go focus on like what my highest income producing activity is now, which is getting in deep, meaningful relationships with folks that need help with their organizations and growing teams and all of that stuff. But like really where on the slowing down component, I feel like going back to a real estate, first off, I think any real estate team that's created from like a team leader doing 3 million a year is insane. But like, if that just blows my mind that keeps happening. But if you take a $20 million producer, or take a $15 million producer that starts to develop the team, a lot of times the conversations that I hear is that they don't have the time to give the people the love. We got some sirens here. Fire outside. No, but we don't slow down to like give the people the time that they love, or give the love that they need to actually train them, and they feel guilty about it. Like they actually know that that person's not getting the love and the care that they need as a realtor, and then still feel guilty about it, but continue to do it and don't do anything to go and try to like fix that problem. They just live in that same chaos of knowing what's wrong. And that goes back to like the individual agent. You know what you're supposed to be doing day in and day out. You at least have a pretty clear picture, and then you don't do it.
100%.
So for us, I mean, I really feel like what I see a lot of times is that it's that team leader that isn't completely clear on what they want to do with their team, with their agents, and they're not purposeful about making those agents the best they can possibly be and developing them as badass business people. They're more so using them as assistants to take the shit leads that they don't want. And that's not, in my opinion, what this is all about, and is going to implode eventually on them.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest production challenges that start to happen as we grow real estate business is the fact that we want to bring agents in and we want everyone to be like us. And they're not going to be like us, because if they're like us, they're going to go build their own real estate businesses. So maybe you can get them for a short period of time. If you can keep a top producer in that you really grow fast, 2 years, you're probably winning. Yet the better you can get at creating an environment for people, which is a lot of what Align is for us. It's how do you create the environment where no one leaves, because the environment supports whatever status of growth you may achieve, even if that's ready to get out of production yourself and help lead others. There's so many people to lead who aren't there yet. So I think that's a big thing, but most teams don't have that. Most of them have the ceiling where you either run in my box of productivity, if you can even produce, and if you don't, then the opportunity is not there for you anymore. So we just recycle through the energy of how we get people into the relationship with us and into alignment with our core values, but then it's a mismatch in the ceiling that we put on them. And so that's part of it. And then the other part of it is most people just don't even have the mechanisms to get an agent to close a deal a month. And the reason I'm so passionate about a deal a month, not only do I believe that everybody deserves to apply effort within a 30-day period and be compensated for the effort. Otherwise, I think mentally it's very unhealthy for you to be pretending like you're working and not get paid. But
Right.
there's also a level of stability in the actions that cause somebody to be able to close that deal a month. So no matter where you are, you come to me, of course, everyone says, I want $100,000. And then the next person comes to me and says they want to gross $1 million. And then they want to gross 2 million. Then they want to gross 4 million. All that really starts basing itself on is how many people can you first get to stabilize that they can close a deal a month. And
Yeah.
then from there, all of a sudden you have all these opportunities to have your producers and do more. Yet if their infrastructure is not there to create, I'm just passionate about stability
Right.
inside of real estate agents' life, then you're not going to be able to create, again, that energy and the production that you need. And most agents don't know how to do it. And most team leaders aren't slowing down to build it, because most people are working off of personal genius. They're not working off of a system and a structure. They're lucky because they're relationshiping. And really good agents are just really good with people. And then when it's time to go teach other people how to be good with people, if you're not naturally a communicator, if you're not naturally comfortable with human beings, we can take the horse to water, we can put salt in their mouth, but we cannot force it to drink.
Right.
And that's a lot of where agents and team leaders just bump their head against the wall. One of the saddest things for me, I would say, in the challenges that I see happen with this and the people that I've coached and that we lead even in our networks is the leaders start to make themselves wrong for the lack of performance of others. And then they just continue to pour into leaky buckets. Like, what's the next magic pill? What's the next $5,000 coaching program? What's the next trip I can take these agents on to attempt to get them to work? Yet the reality is if we can do a better job learning how to find people that want it for themselves
Right.
and have the mindset and belief in themselves and are willing to work, then everything else becomes easy and completely unnecessary, because you have that desire inside. And again, the belief system to me is the structure of everything.
Well,
And yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I want to stop you right there because you touched on something that's super important. And I feel like when we talk to team leaders about what their interview process is or their selection process is for the agents to come onto the team, or what their pipeline development looks like to actually build that dream team for themselves, they don't have one. It's usually
It's like a pulse.
it's we'll take that person, we'll
Hmm.
take that person, we'll take
Yep.
that person. And I think that when you're really purposeful about how you're putting people within your organization and you're onboarding them in the right way, like I'm so grateful. I'm fortunate that I said no to a lot of
I was
people
gonna say it's more the no's than the yeses,
from
right?
the get. Like I did it where I was trying to create that Navy SEAL organization where everybody was 20 plus million per year and everybody was me. And we used to joke, like we had a John Belushi poster up from Animal House and all that stuff. Like it was very fratty, which we've gotten. We actually, I think we have more women in our organization at this point, and it's
Yay.
led by females. No, but with that, like I knew that I had to protect the culture. I knew that I wanted ex-athletes, worked really well for me in the beginning. And from there, it's like at the end of the day, we brought on people that wanted it. And I could never be where I'm at today if it weren't for like that core founding. I want to say it was like 6 or 7 folks that came in like 2016. Eric Goldfarb, I always shout him out. He's my first one. He came onto my team. I broke off another team. He came on January 2016. I had no admin. I had no nothing. I just was like winging it. And he's still here with us today. And he's done so much incredible stuff for the organization. But
Yes.
that's where people really go wrong is they're we'll onboard a whole team and I'll say, okay, great. You have 7 agents. Who should come on with us? And they'll be like, I really like this one, this one, this one. The other 4 shouldn't be here, but let's give them a chance. And I'm kind of like, should we really give them a chance? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, we'll give them a chance. Like I'm willing to do what they want to do as leaders and whatnot. But point being is if you really lead, with your gut and with your instinct around who should be with you and who should not be with you, are they getting you closer to where you want to be? Are they listening to you? Are they getting closer to where they want to be? Like when everybody's rowing in that same direction, that's when it really becomes that culture of like, we get shit done, period.
We get to win. I think one of the other things that really brings up for me is knowing that, oh, I just lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? Oh, shoot. They'll cut it out.
We get shit done.
No, hold on. What were you saying when you were just talking? Because it was such a good point about the agents.
I was just talking about like how them all rowing in
I
the same
forgot it.
direction, them all winning, bringing in the right people.
Totally drawn with like,
John Belushi.
yeah, I can't believe that I just totally drew a blank on what it is. We'll keep going. I'll remember.
Yeah. But that too, I mean, that's what I touched on earlier. I mean, that's the problem with, hiring certain admins and everything like that too. Is like, is that the person that is going to run that department? Is that the person that's going to service the clients and the agents in the way that they're supposed to be serviced? Who's playing all out?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the times as we are growing in the real estate business, um, one of the things that is very special about you is that you continue to show care for your people at all times. And
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of the reason that a lot of people who've gotten into business with you have never gotten out of business with you. But most successful real estate agents, they tend to be high Ds. They tend to be moving really fast. Their energy is wonked all over the place, and people just like forget to care.
Right.
And I think that was one of even the lessons for myself personally. I had some really hard lessons about having to learn how to care about people and slow myself down and make sure that I gave like the appreciation and I honored the people in my world and I made them feel important and I made them feel loved. Um, like I have a story from like 2016 where I had these admins that I worked with on my team, and then I put myself into expansion. And then I was like, oh, well, these work now for this person. They don't work for me. And I would like walk up and down the hall every day, like typing on my phone, and I wouldn't even stop and say like, good morning.
Yeah.
And I got out of business with them. And in that exit interview, one of the things that she said is, I just really missed you saying hello to me. And I'm like, I feel that.
Yeah.
So now I say a lot of extra hellos and like a lot of love. And I've really worked on myself to transform how people perceive and receive what we're doing on a daily basis, because we get so stuck in all the other things we're doing We just forget that we need to be with our people and for our people. And when you lead with that, you can create and build more of what you want, because really growth happens intrinsically towards, if you have 10 people that are alike, you're going to go get 10 more people like them.
Right.
And being able to create that environment is really challenging for team leaders if they don't have any mechanism in which they let people in and out of their world. I was really proud this year. I had mentioned before when we were talking how like my team for the first time hit all their goals, and we had never done that before. I think the only reason that happened this year was it was the first 12 months that I ran an introductory boot camp on my team, and where people had to go through a 2-week period before they could stay on, or they were not allowed to stay inside the team and they could be in the network or anything like that. So by just having the right people in the seats and not having anyone in the team who is dragging everyone down, and being able to have like a baseline of just a standard, which is, I think, the big thing that gets lost. I remember what I was going to say now. So, like kind of on the standards, a big part of what happens in the conversations you were saying is that we often are leading with emotion in real estate business. And whether it's the way you feel, whether it's the way the agents feel, and mostly it's the attempt at an accountable relationship, but an accountable relationship that's built on emotions and what people are telling themselves in their brain. Just because your brain thinks it doesn't make it true. Yet when there's no level of data or evidence in the real estate business to see if people are winning or not winning, that is probably one of the most broken pieces of team that I have come in and supported and helped people build out, is that they're just stuck having emotional conversations all day long with people of the excuses and the reasons, and they don't really know which end is up because they don't have anything in front of them to show them the scoreboard. I always ask when I teach, do you know any sports that you know whether you win or lose without a scoreboard? I offer $1,000 all the time.
I'm actually thinking right now too, which I'm going to beat you on that.
You're going to find it.
Get my grand from you, but yeah.
You'll get the grand. I haven't had anyone tell me yet what it is. So how are we going to go out and play a game and not know the score and expect that we're going to win? Or how do we expect to coach or lead our teams and have no idea? We could be the best play runners in the business. We can get out there, we can get on the field, we can run and run and run, and we can score and score and score, but we don't know who else is scoring. We don't know what score actually gets us to win. We didn't see which player actually was scoring more than the other, or who was keeping their end of the bargain, or who was actually not doing what they were supposed to be doing. So the more clarity that we can bring and the more evidence, it's just empowering from a leadership and an organization standpoint when we don't let people share only their perspective from their mood, but we can actually bring a foundation, which is data, which is metrics, which is the way we look at lead conversion, the way we look at our database and how we talk to it. That is very powerful, yet it is one of the things most disempowering about 95% of real estate teams, because it takes a lot of work. We've been working on it for 2.5 years and we're still not perfect. We are better than we've ever been. But in 2.5 years of attempting to get our organization to be at 100% on data, there's so much that goes into it. So it's a very never-ending journey. And for most team leaders, because of the time, energy, effort, a lot of times our operators aren't excellent enough to be able to drive that. So that's a big pain point. And a lot of what ends up happening in the operational world, just on the other side of it for these team leaders, is that I've found 3 people in 12 years that can actually build and architect. And what we believe when we hire somebody into the role of like our EA is like, oh, you're my EA now. You're going to take all my problems. You're going to deal with my personal issues, my professional issues, my TC, my listing management, my agents, my onboarding, my marketing. And I expect you to create systems for me around all of these structures. It's really an unfair expectation of most people. And I've watched so many operators and team leaders be in misalignment because the team leader expects this operator to be able to like build and architect again. And this is just a really incredible worker, a really incredible systems follower, a really incredible leader. And when you've seen these examples of where you can actually take these people who you think are maybe less than awesome, and you actually give them the system to run with instead of expecting they're going to create this, all of a sudden you have a rock star. And so that happens all the time, where we're just literally trails of dead bodies, cemeteries of human beings being left behind in these teams because they're not good enough for us, because they can't do enough for us, because they can't make this magic happen. It is very challenging, and you have to pick one. You either get a builder or you get an operator. The expectation of someone being able to do both, especially at the $45,000 you'd like to pay them,
Yep.
it's just really not happening. And that's a big breakdown in real estate business.
Yeah. 100%. I think it's crazy too. Like it's just, I always say, like realtors start as salespeople. You know, they start as good salespeople and then they become a small business owner. And I feel like that's like, so anybody listening in, I mean, a good salesperson in our, at least in New Jersey, the top award is 20 million in production. It's about 500 grand a year in GCI. And then from there, like you were saying earlier, maybe they'll net 300, 350. It depends on where their expenses are. If they have assistants, I've seen people literally burn the candle at both ends and net
Nothing.
almost, well, I've seen that too, but I've seen it where they really run at a high profit.
Yes.
With it just being them and they're knocking things out of the park and you know, they're working a lot, but they're always glued to their phone. They can't focus on their kid's soccer game, that sort of thing. But then you graduate to the next level, which is a small business owner. And there are good small business owners and there are bad ones. And there are people that, you know, there are plumbers out there that like don't return calls, but they're the best plumber in the world and stuff. Like there's things that you start to experience. And that's probably from that 20 to 100 or 120 million kind of producer. And then when you start to get up over that and you start to have over 15 agents, 20 agents in your organization and multiple staff owners, you really are corporate at that point in time. And that was one of the biggest growing pains for me, was to get from small business owner, salesperson to small business owner was a really easy transition. Small business owner to corporate, not having any corporate background or anything, was really a big shift for me. And obviously you have, you know, your, I don't know if you're ever corporate, but you have a much more corporate background than I do as like more of a salesperson. But Omar, who's our director of sales too, he came from corporate sales. So like he understands you don't get 3 strikes in corporate America with a sales job. If you don't follow up with the lead that a company paid money to put into your account and you don't actually follow a process, you don't have a job the next day. Like it's so interesting how enabled realtors are and the amount of money and the amount of time that goes into generating these leads, which are far bigger commissions than a lot of corporate America can get on, you know, sales that they typically do. It's just, and it just blows my mind. So it's nice for me to have that, you know, that corporate vibe within and that corporate background within what we're doing, because I'm definitely the opposite of anything corporate at the end of the day.
I mean, one of my favorite conversations to have with agents in like the agents gone wild world around how they believe they should be like making money, or how many hours they think they should have to work every day, or how you think you can be a real estate agent and you're automatically going to make $1 million if you don't do anything. But it's really funny because they often just forget that they have a job.
Right.
And when you have a conversation and I said, okay, you want to make $250,000, tell me if you're not a realtor where you're going to make $250,000. Where is it? What are you going to go do? Oh, I'm going to do pharmaceutical sales. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that. Well, the reality is every other position that most people have a chance of doing that, because if you're failing at sales entrepreneurship, you're not going to succeed at business entrepreneurship. So that's not likely the path for one of those people. Yet, when you think about it, in order for you to make $250,000 in corporate sales, what we talk about, and my passion of all passions, is it's sales ops.
Right.
And what most people are missing is that in all sales structures, in all industries, it doesn't really matter what it is, real estate just happens to forget there's these tools that everyone has to use in their database, in their CRM, their pipeline management. When I was in corporate sales, if I didn't have the conversations that I had uploaded in the pipeline at the end of the day for my 9 a.m. call, I didn't have a job. Right. If I couldn't tell them the projections of what were happening in the next 30 days in a moment's notice, I did not have a job. If I didn't have the cards I received from the networking event in there within 24 hours, I also did not have a job.
Right.
So Omar, very similarly, we understand the sales ops side of it, and where a lot of real estate agents, they just want to throw it against the wall and hope that something happens. Yet when you bring the magic of the sales operations with the ability of just selling and relationshiping, that's how we prove and get these results that are like 100% guaranteed in what we were doing in a line. Because when you can meet that with the person's work ethic, the results are numbers based, and there's going to be a certain amount of appointments that's going to get you to a certain amount of helds, to agreements, to pendings, to closed. And, you know, that example again of like, you're not going to run a 2-minute mile. So if that's what you're showing up for, you're a little bit off base. And that's a big challenge in real estate teams, is getting people to understand the minimum amount of effort they need to succeed,
Yep.
let alone the maximum they need to thrive.
Right.
That's why I'm really passionate about like baseline and dreamline goals, where a lot of team leaders also just let people set whatever they want for themselves. Oh, you're going to make $500,000 on my real estate team this year? That's awesome. I can't wait. Well, that's really, really unlikely. Most of the team owners are not netting $500,000 at the end of the day when they're getting started. I mean, that's just the reality of it for them. So again, just bringing a little bit of the reality away from the agent delusion and the evidence, I think is one of the greatest pain points, but also the magic pill.
Right.
Because when you can structure it and you can put those things in place, we can hum.
Yeah. And I feel like that too is like something that one of my coaches in the past, he always said people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 5. And I think that really goes back to having a clear plan where even if you do 80%, even if you do 40% of what we're asking you to do,
you're going to win.
You're going to win. And it's not complicated. It's about showing up at 9 a.m. and having your pipeline ready and understanding where things are. Omar's a perfect example of the sales ops component, where he runs basically our whole sales organization. It gets heavy on the tech side of things, is in Zooms all day long, is in meetings, is on with Zillow, everything, Homelight meetings, all of that. And he still sells 20 million a year in production. So like he's working a hell of a lot more than a lot of the agents are, and is still one of our top producers because he just runs a system. So it's like, I would venture to say he's putting 10 hours a week into doing 20 million a year, and probably more than that. But point being is like, he's very systemized in the way that he does it. And Kevin Cassie, Monique Belgrave, Eric Goldfarb, Dan Spitz, any of our like top agents, they just follow a process.
Yes.
A simple one.
One of my favorite sayings that I learned in expansion is, the person is innocent and the system is guilty.
Look at you.
Yeah, look at that. It's pretty awesome, right? And so everywhere we're in pain, we're missing an expectation and we're missing a system. And when it comes to systems, I don't think that people realize that there's 2 types. There's behavioral systems and there's operational systems. So it's not just about like what you're going to use to make sure you get your listings across the line or how you're going to check up on your database. The first system you need is like, what system are you going to use to show up to life? Like, how are you going to wake up in the morning? And how are you going to make sure you know what you're doing in priority, and you're not leaving it up to your brain to decide what you do moment to moment, but you leave it up to a structure, a system. So these systems around behavior, and then these systems around, again, operations, everywhere you take yourself out of it and you instill it in, that's what gets you from mediocre to excellent.
Right.
And I say all the time to people, I am the hottest mess in the universe, more than anyone in the world. Yet the reason I am the way I am, and I am so structured and organized and able to execute and just have this high level ability to be able to operate, is because I took all my entrepreneurial self away. From the second I open my eyes to the second I go to sleep, I have zero control. And the second I give myself control is the second that it all falls apart. And I know that. So I make sure that the people, the places, the priorities, the calendar, the CRM, the database structures around my pipelines, like everything is just so nailed down. So I don't think during the day. It's not like, oh, what do I do next? And where do I go? And what do I prioritize? And so it's just to show everybody that when we sit here and we talk and it looks good and it sounds like, oh, well, they can do all these great things and I can't. You can actually do anything that you want. You just have to be willing to put structures and systems in place for yourself, knowing that your brain does not run an effective show. And most people think that their brain and their ego are the leader, and that's the reason they're failing.
I love that. Awesome. Well, I think that's a good spot to wrap up. That basically sums up our opinion of teams and team leaders and agents and everything like that. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Jen, thanks for coming up from Baltimore.
Of course.
And I look forward to seeing you on the next one.
My pleasure. Thanks.